clients. However, this acculturation also happen. Someone who were born here, for example, they were born here and then they used to be raised in East Coast, and then now they move to the South. Then they have to experience, or they have to adjust to the new experience and new culture. And in those experiences, of course, they are unique. However, many people do not recognize what kind of original cultural values those clients might still carry and how their adjustment could be happening. And those are all process, but not a result. So even though someone has been living in one area, they continue experiencing and processing this acculturation. And also, this is also the true for our profession too. When we are working in an agency setting, when we are working in a school setting, those are organizational cultures could be very unique as well. So those are some way we need to pay attention to. And the second one is a racial identity development. When some people are coming to this country, when they were younger, their experience might be very different from someone who came to this country when they are an adult. Also, this is a tie to the Erickson's developmental model as well. These are also age basis. However, these are also environmentally influenced as well. So these are also another areas to assess what kind of cultural norms these clients might have. So even though, like me, I say I'm Asian, my experience and cultural perspectives and norms are very different from someone who are Asian American who was born here. So that is the starting point, how we can assess individuals' cultural values clearly. So the third one is values and beliefs and biases. I talked about this earlier, but again, this is consistently shifted, and this is also values in a relationship. So for example, when a client is seeing, so female client is seeing male client, male counselors, or this younger clients see much older counselors. So those dynamic could be change their values and beliefs because of this hierarchy, could be power, could be value conflict, could be the expectations. The second point is understanding culturally relevant strengths language. So this is where I'd like to focus on from now on. So how this language can be facilitating as a part of a strengths-centered approach. So those are some of the overview. So let me know if you do have any questions. I'm not seeing the comments, unfortunately, because I'm doing a full screen share. So please do unmute your mic and let me know if you do have any questions or concerns. And again, if my accent is not clear, please do let me know. Okay, so I move on. So the first of all, I'd like to introduce some of the highlighted differences, cultural differences in the Western culture and the Eastern culture. So it's not really dividing to two different cultures, but this is more like a highlight of what can be manifested differently, although this is not applied for everyone because of the individual's uniqueness, as I discussed earlier. So the left-hand side is a Western culture. I just go quickly. So yes, this is individualistically and unique. With Eastern culture, this is more of social norms and group cultures are emphasized. Western culture, this is expressing self directly or direct communication can be encouraged. Whereas in the Eastern culture, harmony is very valued. And also individuals consider keeping and maintaining a faith, not only about their faith, however their families face, is very important. And in the Western culture, self-enhancement is valued, but in the Eastern culture, this is more of a self-criticism. So, for example, when we are in a problematic or challenging situations, many of the clients are from Eastern culture say, oh, yes, this is what I deserve when they are in a crisis moment. And this is more like suffering. And instead of trying to solve those problems, they are trying to understand, why is this happening to me? What is this happening to me? And what does that mean to me? And the self-criticism can be often come of their own identity. It looks like low self-esteem, but more of this is a cultural. Because we have to maintain a harmony, we do not talk our positive selves quite a lot. However, it's easier and more familiar with talking about our negative area culturally. So Western culture is focused on the positive than the negative, and Eastern culture more like negative focused than positive. Not only for ourselves, that sometimes like we tend to see each other, although we do not communicate other people's negative area, but we probably see more. The Western culture manage positive aspect. It's a similar except negative aspect in Eastern culture. And in a Western culture, positive for others. Try to point out something really good about other people. And whereas in Eastern culture, they do value or their self-esteem based on what other people say or think about them. So they don't believe they are good until other people say you are. In a Western culture, right-based society, I do have a right to do so. I do have a right to say so. Whereas in the Eastern culture, more of duty-based. So I have to do this. I must do this. I have a responsibility for doing this or saying that. So these are some highlights. Do you have any questions? Okay, so in the Eastern culture, group goals often override individual goals. This is related to the harmony and also social norms and group culture values. Therefore, when we are in organizations, community, or any kind of group dynamics, this is where individuals often assess automatically what this group's expectations might be. Of course, those are an assumption, so those are not right. However, this is the first thing they often think about. And even though when we value, for example, working hard, if this organizational culture is relaxed, they try to be relaxed, even though that might not be this individual's core value. And when those core value and group goals value or group values are conflicted, these individuals often see some gaps and some incongruency in the self, and then some distance from self, and so on. However, they tend to give up of their own goals or values in order to fit with the culture. So this is happening in the family, happening in a small society, culture, friendship, work, or in a counseling relationship as well. So these are some of the cultural challenges. So I did some scholar research, and also this is based on my own research I conducted a few years ago with my clients. So some of them what I learned from my own research as well. So the client's challenge in approaching this strength-centered approach in counseling. So the clients identified on strengths is very difficult because their focus is more on the negative self or criticism. So if we ask what is your strength, and they have a very difficult time to not only saying, but identifying what am I good at. So talk about self is not very comfortable for them. In this culture, I know show and tells are very popular or common to do even when we are young. However, many cultures, they are very passively learn many things. Therefore, they are okay to listen to others. However, when they are trying to talk about themselves, about their family, this is very difficult to do so, even in a counseling situation. So they also, again, similarly, focus on the self is hard because they have learned to be in a society, to be in a group. Therefore, they consistently assess other people. What is a cultural norm in this group? What is the expectation? Therefore, they tend to put themselves aside. So when they are asked to focus on themselves, they do have some challenges. They don't just know how. And accept positive self views. It's not only from themselves, but even though someone said, these are what I see your strengths are here and that, but their initial reaction is, oh, I don't know how to take that compliment. I don't think this is only unique in this Eastern culture, but I do also see in this white American culture, some of them are not good at taking compliments. So another thing is understanding Western valued strengths qualities. So at the beginning, I introduced those strength-centered principles. But those principles or those values in the strengths qualities are often quite difficult for someone from outside, very difficult to identify how come this is a strength. And this is also the impression management. This is their critical self-view, yet they're expected to be humble. And when they have a value of being humble, and someone is focusing on emphasizing this individual's strengths, they do feel conflicted because this is not how they learn to present themselves. So those are some of the client challenges in a counseling session when using a strength-centered approach. So the right-hand side is a counselor's challenges. It's very difficult to create this equal or close to equal dynamic in this counseling relationship with clients from those Eastern or Asian cultures, because clients often see counselor as an authority figure. So no matter what we say, this is how they do have an expectation. Counselors, you must have an answer. Counselors, you know how to fix me. These are the fundamental values they bring to the counseling session. So that's why clients are often very passive. They do ask many questions, they seek advice, and then they do really try to see what our expectations might be. So understanding client strengths and culture. This is a cultural things we talked about earlier, and barriers and biases. So yes, this strength-centered approach have developed in this Western culture. Those skills and techniques are Western-based. So how we can probably apply or adjust to these Eastern cultures or collectivist culture can be still challenging. So those are some of the questions I asked to those clients while I'm doing this research. So the first thing I asked that client, what do you like most about yourself? I didn't ask them, what are your strengths might be, or what are your strengths? Can you tell me your strengths? Those things are sometimes I could use with some of the clients, but with these Eastern or Asian American and Asian clients, I avoided using the words of strength. Instead, I asked, what do you like most about yourself? And I didn't get good response. Next, I asked, what do you think you do well? So this is a little bit more objective, and they can assess what they did compared to who they are. Yet I couldn't get any positive response. It was still very confused for them. Then I asked, what do the other people say they appreciate about you? So this is a really excluding themselves and inviting other people. What do you think other people? What do you think how other people see you? Still no. So this is the thing. Would you try and guess what other people might like about you if I asked them directly? So in this situation, they don't have to deal with it because they could just have an imagination of I am communicating with someone they know. And I really stressed, please do guess. It's not the right or wrong answer, but I'd like to see what other people may say about you. And whatever, however, how many times I asked them, these are their answer. I don't know. And then sometimes they asked me, what do you think? What do you see about me? They say, can you tell me some of them so that I can probably think about that? Or they also say, I need to ask someone else. Can be my parents, my partner, or my friends, my supervisors, and so on. I don't think they really try to avoid answering those questions to me. However, it seems to be very confused to start thinking about that. And I felt I was stuck. Okay, what else can I do? Because these are something I have learned when I was learning about this strengths approach and how I may be able to invite and encourage those clients to start seeing their strengths or talking about their strengths. And I found none of them are working. So this is what I started doing. I started using those cards. So those can be called strengths cards, and some of them are just animal cards. And on the very left-hand side in the yellow frame, this is like Pokemon cards, so more like superhero. So by using those cards, as you see, some of the cards, I on purposely chosen cards which has some English English language on it. Some of the strengths cards are only showing pictures, illustrations, and colors, and so on. I think both of them are okay to use, but since many of those clients I did interview, their language, their English is their second language. I try to facilitate this language piece as well. And how I used this was, so I showed this strengths card, and I asked my clients to pick some of them they can associate with. Can be those words or languages, and it can be those characters on the cards. So if someone chosen which one's a good one? So if someone chosen this, let's say giraffe, then I asked this client, so what is the positive part of giraffe? Why do you like giraffe? And what kind of a characteristic giraffe has? And you can associate with. And by talking about these animals or characters or colors and illustrations, they are able to talk more specifically about these characters and how they can connect with. And this is how I started building these clients' strengths language around it, or getting to be familiar with talking about their own strengths or even some of the characteristics. So these are some of the strengths cards I was using, and you can find some of those cards for free online. You can download and cut and paste. And also, after those clients chosen those cards, usually I asked them, so what kind of cards do you think your parents may choose about you? And they could be choosing the same cards, could be different cards, but this is how they start increasing the perspectives. This is how I see, but this is maybe, yes, guessing. Maybe other people may see me. And again, next step is, so if you do not associate with, for example, I don't know, the birds. So what do you think, what do you want to do if you want to be a bird? So what kind of things are missing in order to become a bird? That means they are trying to fill the gap. These are my goals. These are my desirable selves. And this is where I am. So I need to do this. So the strengths card can be also used to facilitate their future goals and what kind of people they are trying to be. And also, of course, they can use these cards as identifying some of them they don't want to be, or how people may misunderstand about themselves. I think those people see me as if I was a dog. However, I don't think so. I think I'm more like a cat. Those are very common conversations or identification I often hear from my clients as well. So animals are easier, but sometimes they do not like to do so. Then I try to use different cards. Like on the right hand side, it's more like a visually artistic. So some of my clients tend to choose that one as well. And these cards, I usually keep that on my file. I do color copy and cut it, and I often give this as a gift for my clients when we are terminating. Do you remember you chosen this card? So this is a small gift I usually provide for my clients to remember their strengths. So I will shift this to talk about more of language. So how these different language can be used and how much this language can have a power. So those are what you already saw earlier slide, and those are developed in this culture Western model. So I'd like to explain to you how we may also shift from this, but can be integrated with this. So these are not totally useless. These are very useful by modifying, adapting, or directly introducing this. So I'm going to explain how to do. So those are some of the culturally sensitive strengths qualities. By doing research, these on the right-hand side, specific languages are something my clients chosen by using those strengths cards, or they might create those words by themselves if those languages or words are not available on the cards. So the social relationship, collectivistic relationship, love relationship, and transcendence. You can see relationships are very centered when we are talking about individual strengths in this Asian or collectivistic culture. And on the right-hand side, these are specific qualities or characteristics, which is on the cards. So on the top, I'm not going through all of them, but there are some of the highlights are loyalty. Probably you remember this is the same as this Western perspective. Loyalty is important. Humble on the second line, forgiving, discreet, and those are something that clients choose. However, this is very important to be aware. Even they say the diligent, for example, how this native or first language English speaker understand the diligent. and how some of the clients who use English as a second language interpret or understand the meaning of diligent could be different. This is happened because of their use of the language in a society, and also they may misunderstand, or their local language dictionary define something very different. So those are the reasons how these gaps could be also happening. So this is very important to remember as well.
Dr. Sano,
Yes.
how do you feel about using translators to overcome some of these language gaps?
Yes, thank you so much for asking that. Yes, so there are many articles that published who are using the translators. And this is yes and no. I think this is not only what we believe. Yes, we'd like to use the translator or interpreter. And sorry, Dr. Elders, sorry if I said that. Are you talking about translator or interpreter?
Actually, I'm not Dr. Eldridge. I am your room monitor, Eve Edelberg.
Oh, okay.
I just have to log in under her name because this is her room.
I understand. Okay.
I am asking about the person who would sit there and would take what you say and say it to the other person in a culturally appropriate way.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. So in person, yes, okay. Thank you for asking and clarifying that. So yes, that is from the language perspective. If the clients do not speak English fluently, well, then probably that is a method to do. But what do you think something can be also missing by using this translator or interpreter? What do you think those might be missing piece?
Probably they wouldn't have the same inflection and intonation in their voice that originally was present.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's true too. And we were talking about values and cultural biases and awareness as well. So yes, as a counselor, we have to be very careful about how we understand what clients say. So when we are using someone third person, third party, this will be even more gaps we might be creating. So there are many cons and pros and cons by using interpreter or translator. So if you are interested in, I really do encourage you go into those research as well. So it's beneficial for some areas, of course, so that the clients can reach out to us. But another area, this is also very important to be aware what we might be losing and what we might be missing. Not only what we might need to be aware of, but we also have to explain these areas to our clients and also these translator or interpreter when they are helping us. So that is some gaps. Your cultural biases will be there, and I'd like to do this. However, these are created. So thank you for that question. Let me know if my explanation wasn't clear.
It was perfectly clear. Thank you.
Thank you. So these are challenges in using second languages. And then just we had those questions. That's very true. The language barrier is very huge. This is not coming from my own research. However, another person researched. So this is a real word, so actual narrative from this participant to this Dr. Che's study. So the participants say it is very hard to explain certain concepts in strength approach such as autonomy and independency. Those two words are very familiar in this Western culture or English speaking counseling. And this participant say those words were very abstract words and different interpretation. So this is not only how we have difficulty understanding some of the language differences. However, how these clients understand the concept of the strengths approach or the specific word we often use, like for example, empathy in the counseling or accountability. So what does that mean to this client? Yeah, so they may have some vague idea, but they may not know what exactly it is. And even though we may be able to explain the definition, does that match or does that fit to this client's value system? That is a question. Therefore, this lost in translation can happen. So while we were using this translation, translator, interpreter, it's fine. Yes, those are some missing area. But even when we are directly seeing the clients and trying to explain those definitions, and it's not just the meaning of the language. Usually, those language can also explain some of our individual experience. So those are very difficult to fill the gap. And the third one is metaphor and meaning. Those are very culturally specific as well. So for example, the client uses this metaphor of, let's say, sinking in the water. So we don't know unless we know the culture. Does that positive meaning or that is a negative meaning? Is this a draining and struggling to me? But that might be very different in some culture if the water is a very spiritual thing or if that definition is a very positive thing for them. So we have to be careful of how these clients use the metaphor and then how they create the meanings around that. However, I also find some advantages in using a second language, even though this client's English proficiency is not fully developed. So there are a few things. Clients find a new voice for themselves in new language. For example, this client didn't know the word of autonomy because this word does not exist in their dictionary in their own country, for example. And when we talk about autonomy is one of the strengths we consider in this culture. And this client can find, oh, okay, not only learning a new language, but they can also learn a new strengths concept. Then they may be able to identify their authentic self to this strengths word. The second one is helping clients create new structures and worldviews. So again, when these clients are so focused on other people centered in order to maintain harmony, this is how these clients originally view their world. However, if these clients can learn new language around these new meanings by talking about independent, how does that look like? Okay, the third one is mediate clients' experience in negotiating self and environment. Similarly, when they came here to the United States and tried to understand the new culture, there are many new experiences and they are trying to form their self. So identifying or developing their identification again. So they often question about themselves, who am I? Yes, this is probably universal for everyone. But when clients experience dramatic cultural shift, then these questions and conflicts can occur even more significantly, and language can fill the gap there because they can explain that experience. Also, the second language can help clients begin describing new emotional and experiences. So in many countries, including in Japan, talking about emotion is very discouraged. So we often do not have variety of emotional languages. When we are sad, it's sad. would we express? Probably not in Japanese. However, when we are using English, it might be easier to express our emotions because of this variety of the language and maybe commonly expressed. So these emotional experience might be difficult to explain or express or address in their own language. However, in English, it could be easier. And also the research said when we are using a second language, some of our emotional experience, which is associated with our original language, can be lost. So if we have a trauma experience in our own language, for example, my case in Japanese, then my trauma experience seems to be blocked in some certain amount when I'm speaking English. So those are some of the research-based finding regarding first language experience and second language experience. At the same time, when we are seeing some clients and they are talking about their experiencing in English, it could be very difficult to go back to their childhood experience or emotional experience when they are talking in their second language. Same reason, it could be emotionally blocked or memory is blocked there. Something associated with the language. So the last one is shared neutral new meanings, which is introduced by counselors to the client so that the client can start learning or constructing new meanings around a new experience with this counselor. So I do have some exercise I'd like you to challenge a little bit. And I can see some of the comments here, but if you could just unmute and speak up, this is very helpful because some of you probably are not able to see these comments as well if you are logging in by your phone. So this is the first picture I'd like to introduce. First of all, please do check with your emotional reaction or cognitive reaction. This is always the first thing. Check in with ourselves. What are you seeing? What do you notice? And these are so these are the Western culture and Eastern culture's differences. And these are the culturally sensitive strength language. You have seen those lists before. So let's do the practice by looking at this picture and by using on the right-hand side languages. What kind of strengths characteristics, what kind of strengths you may be able to identify? Anyone? If you can unmute and say.
Grateful.
Grateful, thank you. Anyone else? How do you see this? I'm not sure if this is a family or friends or neighbors, but do you see they are all together?
Yes.
Yes, and then what kind of language might be applicable when they are all together? What is going on? If you can really see culturally sensitive strengths qualities from that list, any of those language might be applied in this situation, although this seems to be quite crisis moment. Do you see someone is commenting? Not sure if I can see. Okay, thank you. Collaborative and hopeful. Believing in faith.
Appreciative.
Sorry, what did you say?
Appreciative.
Appreciative, thank you. Grateful, thank you, great. So also this gentleman is probably very faithful, maybe playing even look sad. And also this is probably his responsibility to protect their family or someone who is on the same boat, and they are together. So they might be caring for each other. Kids are in women's hands. So even though something looks like a very crisis, we can still try to find something what can be their strength. Could be our cultural perspective, it could be clients' cultural perspectives too. So these are some of the training we need to do daily. So when we look at this picture, if we are daily concerning about where's the strengths, whatever we see, whoever we are talking about, our brains start focusing more on the strengths. However, when we are so focused on finding issues and problems, our brain are trained to always focus on those nitpicking issues and problems. So I've been also trained to focus on some of the strengths in a daily life, no matter what we do. So I wonder if we could also talk more about in this challenging situation, how we may be able to shift our focus on finding strengths, not only seeing the clients from pathological ways. So I have one more exercise.
Dr. Sano, you have approximately 7 minutes left in the thing if you want to open it for questions.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, so just to go with this one. So this is about Asian female college student. This was my client said, my mom has 2 jobs, so I have to take care of my younger brothers and sisters. I do not have time for myself. I don't have time to see my friends or do my homework. I think my friends don't like me because I always decline their invitations. I'm failing no matter what I do, no matter what I do, and I feel really bad about myself. So the first question, what strengths quality do you find? Same as the last one. So I will show you this list again. Second question, how might Western cultural values be highlighted? So you can see these are, okay, thank you. So caring about her family. Yes, that's right. So those are Western perspective of like, okay, I'm failing no matter what I do. Because probably these are what she's experiencing at school. Her friends are available to play or hang out together, but she has her obligations at their house.
I'm seeing social harmony. She has a responsibility as an elder sibling to take care of her younger siblings.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Right. But at the same time, it's causing tension because kids from Western families normally don't have that responsibility.
Exactly. Yes. Thank you so much. So that's a very great point. This is where this client can see the very incongruent self. Yes, I do care about my family, but I do also care about my Western perspectives, values as well. So how you may be able to facilitate her strengths? Exactly what you say. Yes, she's very responsible for her family. Yes, she is very acknowledging her role in the family. Yes, she is very considering seriously about her probably grade or success. And she's probably learning a lot about how to take care of others. So those are how we can shift her program-centered conversations and highlighting strengths from her, and how this client will utilize those experiences in the counseling is really up to her. So those